hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
Andrew Patterson here, host of the Academy podcast, Just Don't Do It. I'm excited to bring you guests who are experts in their respective areas. They're going to go through the things that they stopped doing in order to increase their business. So sit back, relax, and stop doing.
All right, everyone. So I want to introduce to you Andy McCloy. This was a guy that I actually heard on Mike Robertson's podcast, Physical Preparation podcast. And he impacted me probably. I'm not saying other people aren't real. There are plenty of real people out there, but he kind of hit home for me right away, just by the way that he was talking, by the way that he carried himself, and just truly talked about business and relationships. And I'm not talking about networking relationships. I'm talking about relationships within his family, which, blew me away. And so one day I decided to just message him, and to my surprise, he responded. And so, but I mean, he's just an all around great guy, and I'm super excited to have him on. And one of my few opening podcasts. And so I want to give the floor to Andy to be able to talk about kind of where he's at, where he came from, and then other things that he has in the fire. So go ahead.
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I don't think I need to restate my name, but I own BCI Sport Performance and Fitness. We're here in Madison, Alabama. We've been in business about 18 years now, and we serve a wide range of both general fitness population people, but primarily athletes from 7 years old all the way up to the professional levels and, washed up meatheads, like myself. So this has been my life. I mean, it's all I know. I started my business at 20 years old and kind of just stumbled my way through this thing, and luckily figured out by way of falling on my face over and over, kind of how to do things in an optimal way that worked for me. And that kind of brings us to today, where I'm trying to pay that message forward and help young coaches kind of figure out and navigate their way through the complexity of the sport performance business and world. So that's the 2-minute elevator pitch if you trap me in an elevator for a minute,
Man, that sounds refined. You must have been really going at that. I like it.
Yeah. I've had enough opportunities to do that at least I feel like I have that pretty well nailed down.
Absolutely. All right. So just for the audience, what we're going to do is we're going to go over agenda. One of the top things that this podcast is going to help you do is something that you're going to be able to do right away. And so what Andy's going to go through are 2 things that helped him in business that he stopped doing. A lot of us are so consumed on, hey, let's do the next best thing. Let's do this. Let's do that. But in reality, as Andy knows, and me and him had conversations about it, the foundations are going to be the thing that you build upon. And so Andy's going to talk about 2 things in business that he stopped doing to help him get the ball rolling and create more success. And we're going over for the third one, something that really is near and dear to me, and I know it is to Andy, is go over things he stopped doing in order to enhance his relationships within his family. I think a lot of us with entrepreneurship, we forget about family, and then on the back end, you're kind of lonely and empty. And so these are things I think are important that as up-and-comers, especially me, because sometimes I get caught in that. That'd be good to hear from someone that has been successful and successful in his family about that. So, Andy, go ahead and shoot off your first point of what you stopped doing.
So, I've given some thought to that, and I think probably the number one thing that I could share with people that I stopped doing, and I stopped doing it pretty early on with the advice of a business mentor and another industry as a whole, was thinking I had to have it all figured out. Like, I think a lot of people think they have to have the perfect business plan. They've got to have every system in place. And that leads to a lot of analysis by paralysis. It leads to people questioning themselves and the direction that they're going. And I've just kind of lived my life by I don't need to know all the steps. I just need to know the next step. And, kind of tying that together with a legitimate belief in myself that I believe I can get the job done, has served me well. Uncertainty is a hard thing for a lot of people to deal with. But if you plan to open a business and scale it to any significant level, you're going to have to deal with the uncertainty of not knowing how to do everything. And I had the expectation that as a business owner, I've got to have it all figured out. I've got to know all the answers. And I just think that's not true. And in my conversations with other business owners, they've been paralyzed by the same thing. So I think that's definitely the first thing that I would say.
Now, would you say that probably someone that thinks they need to know it all, do you think that that is kind of one of the causes of stress? Like, besides obviously the financial burden possibly, but would you say that that's one of the big things of stress is thinking you need to know it all, and then if something goes awry, that starts to freak people out?
Without a doubt. And I think a lot of us that get into this industry, we're coaches first. We have a lot of knowledge gaps when it comes to sales, marketing, finance, systems, hiring people, training employees. And as you're trying to grow a business, those questions can create a lot of self-doubt. That self-doubt raises stress. And, you can read all the books you want. You can educate yourself online for free. But I really believe that the best way to figure this stuff out is, like, number one, just show up every day and try to do a little bit better. And then number two, find people who are where you want to be and start talking to them and communicating to them about what they've been successful doing. That was a huge, huge asset to me that I didn't take advantage of probably my first 10 years in business. My first 10 years in business, I kind of just focused on being a good coach and serving my market. And that got me to a certain level, but it didn't allow me to scale and grow a business to the size that it is now. I had to start reaching out to other people, paying for mentors, joining masterminds, and again, talking to people both in and outside of the industry.
Yeah, I mean, that's and one of the things I want people to really hear, especially from you, is I think a lot of people are afraid to hire a mentor. Me and you talked about on the phone. I had my reservations, things like that. But all the people that are in your position have all gone through that, and I mean, do you know anybody even off the top of your head that hasn't gone through that is at a successful level?
One of the things that I've been good at is, like, I always say, like, mining for gold. And what I noticed with people is, like, one of the golden nuggets that kept coming back to from every successful entrepreneur that I knew in the fitness and sport performance space was joining masterminds, hiring coaches. That was it. And I didn't want to do it either. Like, I remember, and I won't say who it was, but I remember, like, searching through his webpage, and I was like, man, I feel like it's all pitchy. He's selling me on this. Like, it just doesn't feel good. But what I was doing was, like, projecting my own feelings into that situation. I was creating a narrative and a story that wasn't going to move me forward. I was rationalizing that I didn't want to take action because I didn't really believe that it would have the value that it did. But once I finally bit the bullet and I did take advantage and invest in some of these opportunities, the payback was almost immediate. I don't necessarily mean that, like, monetarily, but it was like, all right, I found a group of other people that are all dealing with the same stuff. And just being, and I'm friends. I mean, this was, I guess, probably 10 years ago when I first joined a mastermind. And now some of these guys are my greatest friends. I've watched all of them grow successful businesses. And I've got enough evidence now to know and believe that, like, if you're resistant to that, that's an issue probably wrapped around how you feel about money. You look at spending money as depleting your resources, as opposed to investing in yourself and doubling down and betting on yourself to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, I like that explanation, and that doesn't necessarily mean, like, hey, just go out there and hire somebody. You're gonna know who the right fit is, but you kind of have to let yourself understand, okay, I'm gonna invest in this. This is gonna be something I want to do, but it doesn't mean just go out and do it. Understand who you're working with, because guess what? There's a bunch of people out there that are in it for the money.
And I'll tell you, I mean, two things on that that I've kind of learned just in hindsight. A lot of people who sell these programs will tell people to push all their chips in. While I understand the leverage that creates, I would never advocate somebody put themselves in a situation where they couldn't take care of themselves or their family to join a program. I think what you have to do is become proactive and figure out a way to earn the capital to make that happen. If you've got to put a coaching program on a credit card and you can't pay that off, like, that's a problem. And I think you need to invest more time in learning how to go out and get clients and make that type of money. While a mastermind or a coaching program might help you do that, I don't believe it putting yourself in risk. And this is coming from somebody that's been a father since I was 16 years old. I just couldn't roll the dice on those things. It just didn't make sense to me. And then the second thing I would say is this: choose somebody that's actually doing what you want to do. I got a lot out of other coaching programs and masterminds where the person leading the group didn't own a gym and had never owned a gym. but there were certain things that they just couldn't help me with. And those were the things that I really needed. I think it's important to, again, find and search out the people that have done what you want to do. You can learn from great salesmen and great marketers. That there is a lot of value in that. So I don't want to act like there is no value or that I didn't receive value from it. But when you find somebody that's really doing what you want to do every single day, that person has a perspective and a level of insight that I think is 10 times more beneficial than just learning from someone else that's been successful in some other segment of the market.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, so that kind of leads a question I'd be interested in what your opinion is. Would it be far-fetched to have more than one coach, and go down the rabbit hole of okay, I want to be a better salesman. This guy's great at sales. I want to be a better overall fitness owner with systems. This guy's great at that. I mean, because let's be honest, there's not too many like Luka Hasavars out there. And
No,
so it's like, do you find multiple people depending on where you're looking to go?
My answer is it depends, right? It depends on
Mm-hmm.
what your knowledge gaps are. I do think that it's important to get a general understanding of what it takes to run a business. And a lot of coaching programs and masterminds seem to provide that. But there'll be this point where you might need more specific help in the area of, say, sales. And there are people that specialize in that, whether they're in our industry or not. So I do think that starting with a general understanding has a ton of value, especially for a new business owner. But some of us are better natural salesmen than others. Some of us have a better understanding of marketing and how to deploy those tactics and utilize the technology associated with them. And others don't. And if you're somebody like me, I had a very limited skill set. My skill set was centered around coaching, and I think I'm pretty good with people. But I needed to understand sales and marketing and systems at a much higher level. So finding coaches that I felt were experts at those things was certainly valuable as well.
Awesome. That was a stellar point. Once again, guys, summary of that, he was saying, stop thinking you have to know it all and do it all. We'll definitely go through those in the show notes. All right, my man. What about point number 2? What was something else that you stopped doing that really helped you work more towards success?
So the second thing that comes to mind is thinking that holding things close to your chest is a benefit to your entire business. And what I mean by that is programming and coaching was kind of always my strong suit. And the problem was I wanted to scale the business. I was doing less coaching, and I wasn't really the guy on the floor doing the coaching. And what I realized by me trying to control the programming, I was creating this bottleneck and not allowing my coaches to grow or have the appropriate amount of influence over our future. So I had to let go of programming. And at first that was very hard. And in fact, like right now, to be honest, I don't feel like I'm as good of a coach as I used to be because of it, because I'm not always focused on programming. But it's been to the benefit of my business, and it's also been to the benefit of my coaches. They've been empowered to step up in different roles and lead and guide the programs that they have control over. And they're the guy on the ground. One of the things that I remember was reading a book by a former Delta Force commander. It's called The Men, the Mission, and Me. And in one of the chapters, he was talking about listening to the guys on the ground. And he was saying, a lot of times these special operation units have people in a command office, thousands of miles away with all these fancy satellites, and they're making these decisions. And sometimes that went good, sometimes it went bad. And what he learned is always listening to the guy on the ground was the key to getting the most out of that operation. And that really hit me at a pivotal point. And so I started talking to my trainers and coaches about what inefficiencies do they see in our programming process, what things do we need to change, and then allowing them to be the ones to actually do it. When you start a business and you're the head coach and you're the head trainer, a lot of times you feel like you've got to be the one driving all those decisions and teaching other people what to do. I found that it was more effective for me to ask questions from the guys on the ground, get their input, and then us work together concurrently to create a solution for that issue.
No, that's super big. I mean, we hear that all the time with people not wanting to let go of the reins. And, I think one huge fear, and I want to hear what you have to say about that, but I think one huge fear is we're like, oh, we're the guy. If we stop programming, if we stop training, are people just going to start leaving and you forget that these athletes love the other guys too, but sometimes you're you're self-absorbed. Let's be honest. Everybody goes through it. And it's like one of the biggest fears, I'm going to lose business if I decide to step out.
Yeah.
And people think they're going to lose a pulse on their business when they're not going to lose the pulse. That's what you just talked about with the story. Your ground people are going to help you with that. So what's your thoughts on that?
So number one, I'll say this, just to be brutally honest, like when I pulled myself out of certain aspects of our programs, we did lose some members. But sometimes you have to take a step backwards to move forward. And if you delay pulling yourself out too long, that process is more painful. So, I do think that you've got to be ready for that. But I will also say that those steps forward have moved our entire business forward. And I think a lot of fitness business owners and strength coach and sport performance business owners, it's significance. Their identity, and I'm certainly speaking from my own personal experience, their identity is attached to being a coach and the respect that they get not only from their athletes, but our community as a whole. And when you start stepping out of that role, it's like you're losing a piece of your identity. And that you can feel very insecure in that place. And I certainly have, and I still do to a certain degree. Like I'm a coach first. And but I think it's a worthwhile transition or growth process for anybody to go through if your goal is to really run a large scalable business that makes an impact in a community. If you just want to be the guy and kind of run let's say a business that does $200,000 a year, and you want to be the guy that kind of is the guy and you're the show, and like there's nothing wrong with that, right? So you got to know what you want out of this. But if you really want to grow a business that makes a larger impact, you're going to have to confront that some of the role changes that are required are going to make you feel insecure. But they're also growth opportunities for you as a leader and as a business person to step into. And I'm big on leaning into that fear. As uncomfortable as that makes me feel a lot of times, I just believe that again is a worthwhile thing for everybody to try and go through.
Yeah, I love that. I love what you also said. Understand what you want out of it. A lot of people, they said, well, they want it all, right? It goes back to your first point. I want it all. I want to be able to expand my business. I want to be able to be on the floor 40 hours a week, but also somehow work another 20. And then, and so that's one of the huge things that I know I took from that is know what you want beforehand.
And that's a lot harder than it sounds because, again, I think what drives most of us to get into business is this need for significance, right? To be different. And that's a hard thing. Sometimes we don't know where that comes from. And we kind of look, we project outwards and we go, okay, well, that guy seems really significant to me. So that guy has a business that looks like this. Well, I'm going to model my business after his. And that can be a great thing or it can be a horrific thing. So I think understanding your personal values, your intrinsic drivers, and how to align those with the business outcomes that you want is something that everybody has to go through. And they don't teach you that in your CSCS. They don't teach you that when you read a business planning book. That you have to go on that journey. And it's not easy, but it's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so going back to when you let over those reins, because, at this time, I think you're at the point you're like, hey, I want to expand my business. What was the time frame and what did that shift look like? And so what I mean by that is I think a lot of people are like, okay, I let go of the reins for a week, but what, oh no, I'm losing business. And they start going into this default mode. And so it's like, talk about the time frame that it took and what the shift looked like in your coaches.
So I would say I was probably in business 15 years before I started letting go. It's been like the past 3 years where I found a coach like Dale who really wanted to step into that role. And I started to realize the more responsibility I gave him, the more he stepped up. So it was really like me finding the right coach, quite frankly. That was a big deal. And what it looked like at first was, excuse my language, a total shit show. It was just me kind of vaguely telling them what I wanted them to do. And then when I didn't see it happen, I would spend a lot of time complaining in my own head about why they can't do it right. And then I just had this epiphany to where it's like, if I would just spend more time with them, showing them what I want and I need will probably get a much better product, right? So what we started doing is just having training meetings where I would spend an hour with them 2 days a week, going over our programming, giving them my thoughts and insight, asking them a lot of questions, and then again, kind of concurrently working on it together. And we still do that, to this day. So that's a standard thing for us. Although now we have one training meeting and then we have one sales meeting on Thursday, because I also believe that your trainers, you either have to have somebody on staff who's an incredible salesman and they want to like really absorb and run that role, or you got to teach your trainers how to sell. It can provide income opportunities. I believe it helps with communication. And there's a whole lot of value in that. So our programming, I feel like we've gotten pretty good at. And we can go as far down that rabbit hole as you want later on. But teaching them sales has been a really, really positive thing as well.
So that is one thing that I have always, and I know where I'm at right now, that we talk about all the time is we always hear, hey, what's the next certification that the trainer should get for training? What's the next drill? What's this? What's that? And then people wonder why there's so much turnover in our industry. And it's because guess what? You got to build a client book. And if you don't know about business, it doesn't really matter how much training you know, unless you get hired by like a huge company like Exos and things like that. But like, if you're in an industry like this and you're trying to be up and coming, turnover is so big because the top man like most of the time they just want you to learn how to train, but then they get upset when you don't sell, know? And so it's like this reoccurring like circle of doom. And so that's why I love hearing that, hey, you have one sales meeting, you have one training meeting, because a lot of these coaches feel like that we don't have their backs because we're not investing the time that is needed in them. And so, I bet that you've seen a huge shift when coaches started to learn how to sell. You've probably seen even more confidence on the floor.
Without a doubt, because I think in order to sell your programs, you have to really know and understand the depth of the program. Yeah. So I think, one, young trainers struggle with that because I'm not so sure they really understand why they're doing what they're doing all the time. So they have a hard time communicating that message to people in front of them. So I think that's definitely one of them. And then I would say almost like there's very few people that get into fitness and sport performance to get rich. Most people get into it because they're passionate about this industry or segment of the industry. So we really have a lot of messed up issues around money. So when we think about, if I say, you need to extract money from this person, they immediately feel icky about it. And when you talk about sales, it's like build rapport, identify a problem, poke at the problem, provide. That just sounds sleazy, right? But if you always remind yourself that what you're selling with all of your integrity is a solution that can change someone's life, I think you can reframe that as you're obligated to get that person to pay for that service. Because I legitimately believe any kid that comes in our facility, we can change their life, whether they get a scholarship or not. I just believe the mentorship, the association with the people in this building has a huge residual payoff. And when it comes to adults, there are people in pain living every single day at probably 50% of what they're capable of being. Taking money for that and then really providing a solution, right? That's a very, very honorable thing. Like, I don't think that should feel icky. So a lot of it is reframing how you view sales and dealing with your own money issues. And I'm telling you, it's like much work as I've done on this, I still struggle with it all the time. I still deeply struggle with it because I want to help people and I don't want to feel like I'm pitching to people all the time. But the fact is, if you want to do well in this industry, you've got to make peace with that. And like I said, it's a personal struggle of mine. So I know there's a lot of other people that share that pain and that issue.
Yeah, 100%. Because like what we were brought up with, no offense to cars salesmen, but that's how we brought up, the skeezy ways of, hey, if you get this, you get that, and but like I know for me in this journey and talking to my other coaches, it's like, no, sales is building relationships. When you sell someone, you should have it to where that person wants to almost, hey, can we go out to lunch? Because guess what? You invested time, and one of the books I'm reading right now is How to Win Friends and Influence People. and the huge thing, and it's a reread, honestly. I mean, I love that book. It helps you re-engage. Where are you?
Yep.
Are you listening to these people? Because like for me, if I meet with like a coach, it's not, and I'm talking about like a team coach, I'm not going to lead with, hey, I can do this for you. It's, hey, what's going on? How's everything going in your life? If you build this rapport, people are going to they're going to ask what you do. Hey, what do you do? That's going to happen. And I think we fear not getting our point out, I would say, so we hurry up and jab in our point, and then the other person just glosses over. Because like the book said, everybody wants to talk about themselves. So be that separator. And, and talking about money, I don't know if this happened to you, but I know when I meet, I've met with trainers before, and, they're like, I want to get paid more. But then we sat down, I said, how much you want to get paid? And they're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what's more to you? What's your target? I mean, are you shooting your arrow into the woods, or are you shooting at a precise target? And boom, that's when it's like, that's what they need help with. They need to learn. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm saying, what are you willing to give up, and what are you willing to invest to actually make that your reality?
Mm-hmm.
It's not our job to solve all those problems for them. This has to be like a cooperative process. They have to be able to give up and invest. And if they can hit those two things, you can find other ways for them to make money. Like, for example, sales is a great way for our trainers to make more money. So we commission them out based on sales. So if you're coaching, you know what you're getting paid for your sessions. But if you have the courage to step into the role as a salesman, give up some of your beliefs that may be affecting your ability to succeed in that arena, right? And you actually do a good job of it, not only are you creating your client book and getting yourself more hours, but you're also getting bonuses on top of that for having the courage to step into that role. And one of the things that I heard here recently, people don't like buy their way into things. People buy their way out of problems. So every person that you're sitting in front of, there's a problem that they have. It's an opportunity for you to provide a solution to that problem. And it's important to frame that in that way. Like, you're not trying to take somebody's money and give them a BOSU ball program that is probably not going to work. Like, you're getting them to invest in themselves, and you're providing coaching. Coaching is the thing that creates a transformation in someone's life.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm probably gonna steal that quote, "Buy your way out of problems." I really like that.
I read it recently. I'll find out where it came from so we can give the person credit. I was like, man, that was awesome. That was really awesome.
No, that's powerful. So I mean, from these 2 points, the main things that people should take away is, just going over these 2 points and stop doing some of these things. You're going to feel a little bit less stress. There's always going to be stress out there, but any reduction is going to help. You're going to find a way to start building that book to create income, and you're going to start fulfilling confidence. I mean, confidence is, that's what we teach when we train, right? When athletes come in, the number one thing, because how many times have you had a parent say, I don't know what's going on. They're great when they're in practice. They're great when they're in the weight room. It's because that on-field confidence. That's what we want to drive home, and that's what some of these coaches need. Did you want to add before we move on to the next one?
Let me throw in one more bonus, because it just popped into my head.
Oh boy!
Another thing that I think people need to quit doing. Quit worrying so much about your social media influence. Like, we believe now that is the key to acquiring clients. I mean, I have pretty minimal, like, my social media presence probably has more to do with the people I know than how active I am on social media. Luckily, I know a lot of people, and they've kind of validated that we don't suck and that we're pretty good at what we do, right? But it's not because I'm posting 3 times a day. And again, like, there are people that do this great, but it still wasn't the backbone of their business, okay? Like, most people, if you look at any successful gym, a lot of these people started out working in big box gyms, or they started running camps on fields. There was no social media. They had to learn how to get good at face-to-face contact. They had to learn how to market and represent themselves without being able to create a pretty image and a catchy headline. And I just think a lot of young trainers, I see it all the time, they're so worried about social media. Like, that is the validator. I mean, I'll give you an example. Dale, one of my coaches, Dale's a great coach that works for me. He's been working for me, I guess, 3-4 years now. He grew up in my program as a middle school athlete all the way through high school and college and decided that he wanted to come work here after that. Dale's probably got 1,000 more followers than me. But I run the company, right? That you can't build a business off social media. Now, social media can put it on steroids. It can enhance it. But if you're a young coach, you need to worry more about the skill sets that aren't associated with technology. You need to understand communication, emotional intelligence. Like, these are the things that are going to help you a whole lot more than posting 3 times a day and trying to create a vlog that nobody's going to watch anyway. And I hope that doesn't sound condescending. It's just, it's a little frustrating on my end because there's this point where self-construction can become self-deception, right? You're trying to create this image all the time, but you're really not truly representing where you are in your career. So you're unable to get the help that you actually need. And you start to believe this narrative that you're this Instagram superstar when you really haven't put in like the foundational work to be a good coach and to be an asset to a company like yours or mine.
That's probably, I'll be honest with you, that's probably one of my favorite points. And the reason is people have a misconstrued idea of what foundation is, and they think social media is the foundation. You know, I heard from Pete Dupuy just put out an article, and I was reading the article, and it talked about, I forget the guy who said it, but there was a quote, and it said, "I'd rather be known by 100 people in one neighborhood than 100 people in 100 different neighborhoods." You know, and the whole point of that is because your foundation is going to be this. It's going to be face-to-face communication, because people can't trust you through social media.
And let me reframe that quote. Because I posted something about this, I don't know, a couple months back, but I look at it like this. I'd rather have 10,000 local people know my name than 10,000 Instagram followers. Now, again, that's more important to me because my mission is to make an impact in my community, right? Now, having 10,000 followers, I might be able to monetize that more, make more money off that, leverage that in different ways. But for me, I want to be a local legend. That's what I want. And I make no bones about that. Like, when I'm dead, I want people at my funeral. I don't want people making posts about how awesome I am. You know what I mean? I want to have actually really impacted human beings as opposed to being a source of digital information or inspiration. And again, listen, I'm not saying anybody should adopt my beliefs, right? But this is what I believe and what I hold true and what matters most to me.
Yeah. But what does social media do, though? Creates more stress. I mean, because if you're on the other side of the coin and you're looking at somebody that has 10,000 followers, you have this comparison syndrome. Oh, but you don't even know how many of those followers are real. I mean, nowadays you can buy followers, you know, and so
there's a lot of guys out there with a lot of followers. And if you go look through their followers and they're all like foreign names and you click on them and it's like a 12-year-old from the Philippines who has nothing to do with sport performance, pretty good chance he bought that follower, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, like, and what you're talking about, I mean, what social media it's not bad, you know, but like you said, it'll put your business on steroids after the foundation's built. Once the foundation's built, once you're community all-star, then when you post, all of a sudden you're gonna have a lot of likes because people know you. It's intentional, you know, and so yeah, I absolutely love that point.
I mean, we just started our business Instagram for BCI like in October. You know what I mean? We trained thousands of kids in this area. We have 100 plus kids that we train year round. And none of it was built on social media, man. It was built on getting out in the community and connecting and networking and serving, like really caring and serving the market.
Everyone. He said serving, not being served. He said serving. And sometimes that comes at a free cost. Building value. You know, I love that. And so for anybody out there that says, I just do this because I'm passionate about it, I don't need to make money. Well, that's your outlet. You know, you can still make money, but if you want to have that philosophy and show your passion, there's your outlet. Go give. Man, you know,
you said something there. And I always talk about like serve first, sell later. Like that's something that I've talked about over and over in my 5 C's talk. And a lot of my success was built on free work. Like I wanted to get into sport performance. So it just made sense to me to start like helping people do it. I needed reps, right? And I didn't care if people were paying me. I was already making money on the fitness side of my business. I was like, I need reps. So I just started working with athletes. Once I figured out how to like, I felt like I was good enough to take money. I started to build a business, but then I would see these kids that reminded me of like me and my friends growing up. They probably wouldn't have had the income to hire somebody like me. Some of those guys that I've worked with, like starting at like 11, 12 years old, are now in the NFL and other professional sports. And I scholarship those guys for years. And there's a lot of gurus that'll tell you, no, don't do that. Oh, yeah, you know, free work, don't do that. And I understand what they're saying. Like I really, really do. But I think this comes back to your mission and why you're doing what you're doing. A large part of me working in sport performance was not about being the best strength coach. I just felt like, one, I was pretty good at this. But two, it allowed me to take all my life experiences and pay that forward to a young teenager. Now, I had a kid at 16 years old. I was on my own shortly thereafter that. I got in more trouble and did more bad things than hopefully most people will never hear about. You know, and it's like, so I would see kids that were reminding me of me, like they had potential, but they were going down the wrong road. And my business became an opportunity for me to intervene, provide the mentorship that I didn't really have or that my parents couldn't provide because of the disconnect between our ages. And I'm telling you, man, it's the most gratifying thing I've done. You know, it's not about the money. It's not about, you know, guys being in the NFL, although I'm very proud of that. It's being able to like shape and impact the lives of young men and women. And that's why I'm here. You know, I mean, that's why I believe that's why I was put on this planet. You know, and that's what I'm here for.
Well said, man. I mean, that was great. So let's move on to the third point, and one of the most important points for me, and I definitely know for you. What were some of the things that you stopped doing in business to help you be more around, to help you build relationships with your friends, family, and loved ones?
That's such a broad thing. So, I mean, we can probably, you know, hash this out. I would say the number one thing I had to do is accept that the grind it out lifestyle is a lie. It's funny, I had a shirt on the other day that I bought a couple years back, and it has a big G on it, and it says grind 24/7. And I kind of caught it in the mirror, and I just kind of laughed at myself like, Jesus, you got to throw this shirt away. Because I think a lot of people sacrifice their relationships, specifically with their family, right? It's funny how they will find time for friends, but they'll sacrifice with family sometimes for this idea that like I'm grinding now so I can provide later. And I'm not saying that you may not be required to have periods of your life where you're doing that. Okay. There will be times where you've got to work more and maybe sacrifice some time with your family as you're building the business. But that doesn't mean that you can't make that time you spend with your family incredibly valuable. And then I think as you grow, the shift becomes to compartmentalize those two things. And me and Mike Robertson talked about it on his podcast. I think Vernon Griffith is the guy that gets credit for the quote, but it's like, there is no such thing as work-life balance because family's always going to be more important than work. At least in my world, it will be. So you can't balance them out. The way I look at it is compartmentalizing those things and allocating the appropriate time for each one and being fully present when you're there. And I think a lot of guys just can't shut their brain off because they're very inefficient at working. We live in a very distracted society, and they struggle to make sure that they're giving the attention to both their family and their business.
Yeah, I love that. I was just actually listening based on what you were just saying. I was just listening to a recent podcast by Luca, and he had, I don't remember his name for the life of me, but he was talking about, it was the one about
Paul Moore.
Paul Moore.
I haven't listened to it yet, but I was told it's a really good one.
Oh Lord, should I not say anything then?
No, not at all. Not at all.
So, but like one of the things that, and you'll hear this, and it blew me away, man. And so he was talking about all these guys that are like, man, I live that grind lifestyle. I can do it 24 hours a day. I don't need to, I don't see my family, but whatever, I'm working hard 18 hours a day. And he went from a different perspective, and he's like, you can be passionate about what you do, but he's like, guess what? I love my family more. He's like, I'd rather, believe me, if I had to choose between work and family, I'm going to hang out with my family every time. He's like, does that mean I'm not passionate about what I do? He's like, no, I love what I do. But guess who I love more? And that hit home for me, because that really hits you. And it's like, it's okay to want to spend more time with your family than you do at at your job,
Right.
and so that was something that was really impactful for me.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, that was
Oh,
computer froze and it's still.
uh,
So yeah, that message definitely resonates with me, and I had to learn it through like pain. And like I said, I became a father at 16 years old. So by the time my daughter was, I guess, 4, is when I started my business. And I didn't get a lot of time with her. There was a lot of grind, and I had that mentality that I got to grind it out so I can provide for her later. And I still, had time with her, but she lived 800 miles away. So I was seeing her, one time a month. And then in the summers when she came with me, I'm working 13, 14 hours a day. So I'm having to have my sister and my parents and people help me take care of my daughter. And then when I'm getting home at night, I don't got the energy, right? So I'm not being the type of present father, that I am now. And I ended up actually getting full custody of my daughter when she was 14, like right before she was going into high school. And excuse me, it was right when we had opened this new location. And I just really, again, was feeling that crunch. Like I'd show up at the gym at 5 a.m. I'd get her at 4:45. I'd train people at 7. I'd run home immediately. I'd cook her breakfast. As soon as she was done with breakfast, I'd drive her to school. Then I'd drive back to the gym so I could have my 9. I'd work from 9 to noon. I'd work out from 12 to 2:30. Then we'd have kids come from 3:30. I'd work till 7:15, 8 o'clock at night. Oftentimes having athletes I trained bring her to the gym to meet with me because I couldn't get out to go get her. So I learned through that experience it was non-optimal times 100. And I really resolved, like, I'm going to figure this out. And it took me investing in programs and just really taking a hard look at the mirror, like what really matters most to me, to start reorganizing my life and my business around being able to spend the time I want to spend with my family. And that's why when I, got married recently and, when Kagan became my daughter, everything changed. I knew what needed to be done. So putting the pieces in place was a lot easier for me than it was when I was dealing reactively, just as I became a father with my oldest. And I got a lot of regrets around that, man. And I'm going to make sure that I spend the rest of my life making up for it in one way or another, because family's everything. And yeah, and my family's heavily involved in this gym. It's like now I've figured out a way to, like, my entire family's here. My dad's out there right now working out. My mom trains here a couple days a week. My sister trains here a couple days a week. Kagan, my youngest daughter, every day after school, she jumps in one of our programs and climbs ropes and does monkey bars. And my oldest daughter comes here on her lunch hour and works out. So it's like now that I've figured out how to compartmentalize things and do it what I believe is the right way, I've seen the payoff. I've seen how your business and your family can essentially become one without sacrificing either.
I like that. I mean, that, and in order for you to do that, I mean, you also had to let them in, right? I mean, I know a lot of owners that they're like, they don't understand. My wife doesn't really understand, but I'll just give her the gist. But like when you let them in, people want to be a part of it. Whether they want to hear the fine details or not, maybe not, but they want to be a part of it. They want to be a part of your success. So let them be a part of your success.
Yeah.
You know,
Listen,
um,
when I first started, my family, they were kind of used to me being a screw up, to be honest. But at like 20, when I wanted to be a trainer, it was like, you're going to do what? Like, you got to remember, this is like 1998. 99, you know, this was not the profession that it is today, right? I think most people know you can do pretty well now in this industry, but they were like, you're going to be a trainer? Like, yeah, right. So, and eventually I proved to them that it was worthwhile. My dad just retired from IBM. He worked in the computer programming world for a long time. My dad is now my operations manager. You talk about letting him in. You want to talk about like coming full circle. Like, I'm not so sure he believed this was a viable career choice for his son, especially I had given him no evidence to think that I would really be successful. But now my dad values this so much. He's out there deadlifting and doing pull-ups at 71 years old. And he gives me a couple hours a day working operations and doesn't even cash his paychecks. You know, it's like, it's the coolest thing in the world to me, you know? And I never planned on this. Like, I never thought it would be that way. I've had other operations managers, but guess what? He's the best one I've ever had times 10 because he's invested in me. And I think that's a really, really important thing, is just figure out how to incorporate your family into your dream. Like, those two things should not be separate. And I'm really proud of how we've done that here. And again, I'm really proud that my entire family is a part of what we've got going on here.
Gosh, I tell you what, I hope people kind of replay what you just said, you know, and the reason I say that is because, you know, I'm not gonna lie to you, in your pictures, you're not a big smiler, but
No.
but the one thing that I want people to look at is when you started talking about your dad and your family being a part of your business, you got the biggest smile, you know, and I think that that's huge because it reframes what success is. It reframes, you know, success isn't just about money, but it's about family being a part of it. Because I know for me, I'm a young entrepreneur, and you know, I'm nowhere near your level yet. But I know for me, success doesn't look like a bunch of money. It looks like, you know, being free of debt, and it looks like being able to spend time with my family when I can, at will, you know. And so that's why, like, that even warmed me up, like just seeing your smile of your dad being a part of your business, all your family members going through in and out of your business, just being able to see them every day, you know. And so for me, that was a huge impact, and I hope kind of people look, you know, go back a couple minutes and just listen to your tone and everything like that.
Well, and let me just say this too, because there's a lot of people that when they are hearing this, they're probably going to say, yeah, but I don't have that type of relationship with my family. Let me tell you this. I didn't either at all. You know, probably up until, I would say when I was I'm 39, I'll be 40 in March. So probably, again, like the past 10 years where I've seen a lot of growth in my life and my business as a whole. And a lot of that was me killing the narratives and the stories that I kind of hid behind, that my parents don't understand me. My parents don't support me. I'll never be who they want me to be. I had to make peace with some of the things that I judged them about regarding how they parented me. And I had to really turn that mirror around and look at my own involvement of that and how I was showing up, and give them some grace relative to the way that they were raised and the way they were parented and the way they were shown how this whole thing should be done. So I had to step into wanting to fix those relationships. And what's funny is the minute I did that, it was like, that's all they were waiting for. And then all of a sudden, boom, everything started getting better. And I'm not saying that, like, no, I am saying it. My family life is perfect right now. It really is. I'm not saying that doesn't come without conflict at times or issue, but it's perfect because we know how to deal with that conflict. We know how to deal with those issues now. It doesn't lead to us not wanting to talk to each other for months just because we have a disagreement about something ridiculous. You know, now we'll hash it out right there. Boom, done. Maybe some hard feelings for 24 hours. That's it. You know, and then it's right back to loving and supporting each other. And that's where at one point in time in my life, I felt very isolated, like I didn't have family. Now my greatest asset is being able to lean on my family. But that, again, has been this like collaborative process between all of us, getting to know each other, letting go of some of the beliefs and judgments we had, and just really trying to just love and care for each other and show up for each other the right way. And, you know, I always say the one thing my parents always did do, despite a lot of problems that we had a lot, is they always showed unconditional love, no matter how bad I screwed it up. And for me, that's like, I'm paying that forward into my own children's life, you know, just unconditional love. And that extends beyond your biological children. That goes into your athletes. That goes into your coaches. Like if you ask any of my coaches, I bet you they'll tell you, yeah, man, I know Andy loves me. Like legit. Because like I lead with my heart now. And I used to feel like that was a weakness. And you're right. Like you don't see me smile much. It's because for years it was always eyebrows down. I felt like I had to be hard. I felt like I had to be tough. I felt like, and a lot of it had to do with the environment I grew up in, but I learned that was weakness. That was insecurity. I was putting a mask on to fit in. And now I realize like leading with your heart, that's the move. That's everything. At least it is for me.
Yeah, I mean that I'm gonna put, that's the main note I'm putting is strength is leading from your heart. I really like that.
With that.
So, you know, I want to respect your time. Let's end it off on talk about one book that, you know, was one of those books that really influenced you. It wasn't one of those things that you just read and said, you know, I might get to this later. Something that kind of provoked you to act. So what would be one of those books?
I get asked this a lot, and like I always want to come up with a different answer, but I always default back to the same book. And even though it didn't force me to act right then, it planted a deep seed in my mind. And I've got about a 25-page ebook that I wrote, kind of like my backstory. I wrote it for Brett Bartholomew's Art of Coaching event. So anybody that signs up for Brett's course, they'll get this free ebook that I wrote, kind of about my story and like 10 lessons from the trenches. And you know, one of the things that I talk about in there is an experience that I had where at like 19 years old, I was the director of nutritional services for this company called HBI Fitness, Health, Body, and Image in the Washington, D.C. area. That title sounds really fancy. All it means is I had to drive around the Beltway every day and check up on other people using what was called the Apex Nutrition software. And I had this client one day, and she had incredible results. So I would also check back in with people. And this was at a gym owned by Chris Webber in Greenbelt, Maryland. Anybody NBA fan should remember Chris Webber, Fab Five. And he actually owned that gym. And I remember after this meeting with this lady, I was like, man, what did you do? And she was like, well, I read this book and I went to this seminar, and she started telling me about it. And I was just like, man, that is awesome. You know, I just thought it was amazing. Right. So, but at the end of the meeting, she went her way. I went my way. And I remember I went to go, there was a professional boxer there named Bujay White. And he was like teaching me how to be respectable at jumping rope. So we were jumping rope, and this lady came walking back in, smiling and same energy. And she had a bag in her hand. And she said, hey, I just wanted to get you this. And I opened it up. And this is the exact, I don't know if you'll have the video rolling, but you can see how weathered this book is.
Wow.
And Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. And this is like a super old version. You can see how young he looks on the front of this. And it's just beat to death. And this kind of, at first I was like, what a nice gesture. All right. What a nice gesture. And I remember it had to be days or maybe even weeks after I was I was living in the projects in Indian Head, Maryland. And I'm sitting there and I'm drinking and I'm smoking weed, and I'm just sitting there, and I look over in the corner and I see the book, and I was like, let me just grab it. And I started reading it, and I sat there for hours that night just reading that book, and him talking about beliefs and how belief drives everything, and how to use questions to figure things out, and how values drive behavior. Like, this was my first exposure to this stuff. And I was like, wait a minute. You mean I can change my life? Like, this isn't like the hand that I was dealt. Like, you mean I can play it differently? Like, I thought I just had to play out this shitty hand and hope for the best. But that book it was a major paradigm shift. It made me realize, like, I have control over my life, not my circumstances. And to this day, I lean on that book. And I've done Unleash the Power Within. I've bought every course Tony's ever done. And I'm telling you, his stuff has been deeply impactful in my life. So if there was one book, I got to come back to that one. It's Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins.
Yeah, you want to talk about sentimental value. That is awesome right there. That is awesome right there. So Well, all right, my man. I really appreciate you coming on today. One of the things I want you to just quickly talk about, A, some of the ways that people can contact you, and B, some of the things that you're looking to do personally, such as your business coaching, such as the event that I'm actually coming up to in April. So let everybody know a couple, some of those things.
Yeah, so you can find me on Facebook or Instagram. Facebook is just Andy McCloy, ANDYMCCLOY. On Instagram, it's Andy McCloy _ BCI. B as in boy, C as in cat, I as in Indian. And yeah, I started a group about 2 years ago called The Tribe. And just a lot of people in the industry encouraged me to kind of pay the things forward that I've learned. So I just started, I made a couple Facebook posts. And just off organic Facebook posting, we've grown that group up now to 13 guys who I work with on a weekly business, helping them not only build the ideal business that they want to create, but also create a lifestyle that supports them being with their families or creating families and kind of living the dream. And that process has been really gratifying. And through that, I was just going to host an event here for them where we were going to kind of just pull the curtain back and talk about the systems that we use, have my trainers share information about their roles here. And just through conversation, that turned into people telling me, no, you should market this to other people. So I decided after flying out to my buddy Luca's place, we sat down, we talked about it. I've decided that from April 26th to April 28th, we're going to have an event here at my gym. The first day is going to be just a big get together. I'm going to rent out Top Golf or a brewery or a pizza joint, or I don't know yet. It'll depend on how many guys sign up. But, if it goes well, I will do something along those lines. And then Saturday, people are going to get to watch one of our staff meetings. They're going to watch our large group classes for adults, our programs for middle school and high school athletes. And then from about 12 to 5 or 6 that night, we're going to go in and present on all things that we do here, the essential systems really that every sport performance business needs. Even some guys from my coaching group like Hunter Charneski and Adam Willis, those guys are going to present on things that they're subject matter experts at, like speed. And Adam is a great online coach and trainer, but he's also done really well positioning himself as a social media expert. And then the second day, we're gonna do the same thing. My staff and myself are going to present more on the things that we do and how we do it. And we're going to send people out of here with probably more information than they can ever absorb. So there will also be an opportunity for people to join the tribe if they want after that. But I'm just optimistic and hopeful that we'll get the right group of people here and they'll benefit greatly from the information we're going to share with them.
That is awesome. You done got me excited all over again, dude.
Good. It's important. It's going to be fun. And I won't let people leave out of here without a game plan. Like, we're not going to record it. I mean, we're going to record it, I think, for future content, but it's not like it's going to be online, and things are going to be live and interactive. We're going to make sure that when people leave out of here, they got a game plan, at least for the next 3 quarters of what their business looks like. And I'm going to essentially teach everybody that comes, whether they join the tribe or not, the system that I use with those guys to manage their workflow. And so you'll leave out of here with a game plan. You're going to have a lot of fun. And, I just love like the camaraderie and companionship of getting to hang out with other guys in our industry.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely have that in the notes to everybody. That way everybody can kind of get a summary, and obviously you can replay to hear all the great things that are going to be provided there. Andy, truly appreciate you being on here, my man. I know you've definitely impacted me more than just today, so I appreciate that.
No problem, my friend. It's an honor. Like, I mean that. The fact that people actually care what I have to say is still a little crazy to me, and I definitely appreciate these opportunities.
Awesome. Thanks, my man.